This is the most you will ever make in a single day, Violet. Consider it charity." My father did not even look up from his turkey as he slid the check across the table. $5,000. Fix your brother's mess so the family can eat. Tomorrow is the global launch. If that AI crashes, we all starve. And since you are the only one who speaks computer, you are going to fix it." He pointed the carving knife at me, his eyes cold. "Sign the NDA, take the money, and be grateful I am letting you touch a project this important." I stared at the check. It was not payment. It was the price tag he had put on my entire existence. Before I tell you how I used this exact check to dismantle their entire empire, drop a comment. What is the most insulting gift or payment a family member has ever given you? I would love to know who is part of our community. I looked at the check. I did not reach for it immediately. I let it sit there on the tablecloth, absorbing a grease stain from the turkey. My silence made Henry nervous, though he tried to hide it. He took a sip of wine, his hand trembling just slightly. That tremor told me everything. He was broke. He was leveraging the company accounts because his personal accounts were empty. He needed this launch to succeed, because without it, the illusion of his wealth would shatter. To him, that $5,000 was a lifeline he was graciously extending to his failure of a daughter. But to me, looking at that piece of paper, I realized exactly what it was. It was the price of silence. It was my father putting a numerical value on my erasure. He was saying that my dignity, my talent, and my identity were worth exactly $5,000. No more, no less. That realization killed the last tiny, foolish part of me that still wanted him to love me. It replaced that desire with something much colder. A balance sheet. And I was about to audit him. I knew something he did not. I knew why the software was failing. It was not a bug. It was a feature. I had written the original kernel 3 years ago, late at night in the basement, while Harry was out partying with investors' money. I had built the entire architecture that Harry claimed was his genius invention. And before I left this house for good, I had buried a time-delayed digital rights management protocol deep in the code. A kill switch. It was designed to lock the system down if it was not validated by the original creator. That was me. Harry could not fix it, because Harry did not understand it. He was a salesman, playing an engineer. I picked up the check. I kept my face blank, the obedient daughter finally falling in line. "I will do it," I said softly. Henry let out a breath he had been holding. "Good. I knew you would be reasonable. But," I added, pausing with the check in my hand, "I cannot take this under the table, Dad. I am trying to buy a condo. I need proof of income for my mortgage application. If the IRS audits me and sees $5,000 in unexplained cash, I am not going to jail for you." He frowned, the vein in his forehead pulsing. "So what? You want me to put you on payroll?" "I am not paying payroll taxes and insurance for a one-night job." "No," I said, baiting the trap. "Just mark it as a consulting fee. That way, I am an independent contractor. I handle my own taxes. You just write it off as a business expense. No paperwork for you." I watched the greed war with the arrogance in his eyes. Greed won. It always did with Henry. He hated taxes more than he hated me. "Fine," he grunted. He snatched the check back, scribbled consulting fee on the memo line, and shoved it back at me. He had no idea what he had just done. By classifying me as a contractor instead of an employee, he had just legally conceded that I retained the intellectual property rights to any work I produced, unless a specific assignment contract existed, and he was too lazy to write one. He pushed the non-disclosure agreement toward me. "Sign this. If you breathe a word about the bug, I will sue you into oblivion." I read the document. It was a standard template he must have downloaded online. It had a clause stating the agreement was void if the signatory provided false information regarding asset ownership. It was meant to protect him, but it was going to destroy him. I signed my name. The trap was set. He thought he had just bought my silence. He had actually just sold me the rope to hang him. The launch venue was a cathedral of glass and steel, screaming money and innovation. But I did not get to see the main stage. Henry grabbed my elbow the moment we cleared security, steering me away from the investors and the press. He marched me down a service corridor that smelled of floor wax and old coffee, finally stopping in front of a door marked Janitorial Supply. He shoved it open. It was not a green room. It was a glorified closet with a folding table, a single chair, and a flickering fluorescent light that buzzed like a dying fly. "Stay here," Henry hissed, blocking the doorway with his body. "Do not come out until the system is patched. You are the mechanic, Violet. Harry is the face. Nobody wants to see the grease monkey when they are buying the Ferrari." He slammed the door, leaving me in the dust and silence. I sat down, opened my laptop, and connected to the local server. I was not there to patch a leak. I was there to plant a depth charge. 10 minutes later, the door swung open. Harry breezed in, bringing the scent of expensive cologne and nervous sweat with him. He did not look at me. He went straight to a cracked mirror on the wall, fussing with his tie, checking his teeth. He was about to go on stage and demo a technology he could not explain to a 5-year-old, and his biggest concern was his hair. "Can you type quieter?" he snapped, glaring at my reflection in the mirror. "I am trying to center myself. The noise is distracting." I stopped typing. I looked at my brother, the genius CEO. In that moment, I understood him perfectly. It was not just arrogance. It was a blind spot so massive it defied physics. Psychologists call it the Dunning-Kruger effect. When someone is so incompetent, they lack the ability to recognize their own incompetence. Harry genuinely believed that the code was the easy part. In his mind, the vision, his ability to wear a suit and use buzzwords like paradigm shift was the real value. He thought technology was just magic that people like me conjured up to serve people like him. He did not ask what the bug was. He did not ask how I was fixing it. He did not worry that the system might crash again because, in his world, he was the main character, and the universe would not dare embarrass him. He was safe in his delusion, and that safety was exactly why he was going to walk right off the cliff I was building. "Almost done," I said, my voice flat. "I just need to authorize the patch." "Good," he muttered, finally turning to face me. He looked at the laptop screen, seeing lines of code that might as well have been hieroglyphics. "Make sure it runs smooth. I have investors from Tokyo flying in. If this lags, it's your head." He checked his watch, smoothed his lapels, and walked out without a thank you. He left the door open, letting the roar of the gathering crowd drift in. They were chanting his name. He was walking toward the light, convinced he was the sun. He had no idea he was just a moth. I turned back to the screen. I was not writing a patch. I was initializing the hardware lock sequence. The trap was primed. Now, I just needed to hand him the trigger. I did not write a single line of code. You do not rebuild a skyscraper's foundation 10 minutes before the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out a small, translucent red USB drive. It looked like a cheap piece of plastic you might pick up at a trade show, but it was a hardware security dongle I had encrypted 3 years ago. It was the physical key to the digital lock I had buried in the kernel. I plugged it into the server rack. A tiny red light on the drive blinked once, then turned solid. The laptop screen flickered. The error messages vanished, and the dashboard turned a soothing, operational green. "It is patched," I lied, my voice steady. "But the code is unstable. This dongle acts as a hardware bridge. It bypasses the corrupted sectors. Whatever you do, do not remove this drive until the demonstration is over. If you pull it out, the entire system goes dark." Harry looked at the glowing red light like it was a magic talisman. He did not ask how it worked. He did not ask why a hardware key was necessary for a software patch. He just nodded, relief washing the arrogance back onto his face. He believed me because he had to. He was drowning, and I had just handed him a life preserver made of lead. "Good," Henry said, checking his watch. "You did your job. Now get out. Use the service exit in the back. I do not want the investors seeing you." They swept out of the room, energized by the false save, leaving me alone in the dust and the hum of the servers. I waited 10 seconds, listening to their footsteps fade down the hallway. Then I stood up, smoothed my skirt, and picked up my bag. I was not going out the back. I walked down the service corridor until I hit the secure door leading to the main lobby. It was keypad locked from the other side, meant to keep the help invisible. I waited. A moment later, a caterer bustled through, balancing a tray of empty champagne flutes. I caught the door before it latched, flashing a polite smile as I slipped past him into the main atrium. The transition was jarring. The air changed from stale cleaning products to expensive perfume and fresh lilies. The lobby was a sea of suits, designer dresses, and the low hum of money being moved. I walked straight to the VIP registration desk. The young woman behind the counter looked up, her eyes flicking over my plain blouse and lack of credentials. She gave me the polite, dismissive smile, reserved for lost staff. "The catering entrance is actually around the corner." "Miss," she said helpfully. "I am not with catering," I said, leaning forward. I dropped the invisible daughter act. My voice dropped an octave, projecting the authority I used in boardrooms, not dining rooms. "Check the guest list. Violet Parker, managing partner at Tech Ventures." She blinked, confused, but she typed the name in. Her eyes widened. She looked at the screen, then back at me, her cheeks flushing pink. Tech Ventures was one of the lead investors in the sector. My name was flagged as priority access. I am so sorry, Miss Parker," she stammered, fumbling with a box of lanyards. I didn't realize. We weren't expecting you to arrive from that direction. It is fine, I said, taking the heavy laminated badge she held out. It was black and gold. All access. I hung the badge around my neck. It felt heavy, like armor. I was not Henry's disappointment anymore. I was not Harry's mechanic. I was the money. I walked past the security guards who nodded at my badge, and I pushed open the double doors to the main auditorium. The lights were dimming. The show was about to start, and I had the best seat in the house. Harry stood center stage, bathed in a white spotlight that cost more per hour than he paid me for the entire project. He looked the part. The tailored suit, the confident posture, the way he held the microphone like it was a scepter. Behind him, the massive LED wall displayed the sleek, animated logo of his AI interface. He was launching into his rehearsed speech about visionary architecture and redefining the future. He was using words he did not understand to sell a product he could not build. I sat in the third row, right in the center block reserved for platinum-tier investors. The seat was velvet, comfortable. I crossed my legs and rested my phone on my knee. I was not watching Harry. I was watching the live stream monitor set up near the stage edge. The viewer count was ticking up past 2 million. The whole world was watching. Henry was standing in the wings, just visible from my angle. He was beaming. He looked like a man who had just gotten away with the perfect heist. He thought he had won. He thought I was still in that broom closet, counting my $5,000 and staying invisible. He scanned the front row, probably looking for the venture capitalists he needed to impress. His eyes slid right over me, then snapped back. He froze. I saw his mouth open. I saw the color drain from his face as he realized who was sitting in the VIP section. I offered him a small, cold smile. Then I looked down at my phone. I had the admin dashboard for the USB dongle open. It was a simple interface. A green status bar indicated active. Below it was a large gray button labeled Revoke License. It was not hacking. It was not magic. It was standard digital rights management. I was the administrator. He was the user. And his trial period was up. Harry was reaching the crescendo of his speech. And now, he boomed, gesturing grandly at the screen behind him. Let me show you the mind of the machine. He turned to the console podium and hit the enter key. I tapped revoke. The massive screen did not explode. It did not spark. It simply died. The sleek logo vanished. The animation cut to black. For a heartbeat, the room was silent, expecting a dramatic reveal. Then, the text appeared. It was not a flashy graphic. It was the raw, ugly text of a bio-spoot failure. White, blocky letters, against a void of black, magnified to 40 feet tall. Fatal error. Hardware key revoked. Trial license expired. Timestamp 14/02/35. Registered developer Violet Parker. Unauthorized demo detected. System halted. The silence that followed was not quiet. It was heavy. It sucked the air out of the room. 2 million people on the live stream saw my name burning on the screen. 300 investors in the room saw the genius CEO freeze. Harry stared at the screen. He did not understand what he was seeing. He hit the enter key again. Nothing. He hit it harder. He started mashing the keyboard, his composure cracking like cheap glass. He looked back at the wings, his eyes wide and terrified, searching for Henry. It seems we have a technical glitch. Harry stammered into the microphone, his voice cracking. Just a moment. He was sweating. I could see the beads forming on his forehead, glistening under the unforgiving stage lights. He looked small. He looked like exactly what he was, a fraud who had been caught copying homework he could not read. The crowd began to murmur. Phones went up. Cameras flashed. The live stream comments, visible on a side monitor, were scrolling so fast they were a blur of LOL and scam. Henry sprinted out from the wings. He abandoned all pretense of professional distance. He rushed to the podium, shoving Harry aside, and started frantically typing on the keyboard, as if he could bully the code into submission. He could not. The red light on the USB drive I had given them was dead. I stood up. The movement caught Henry's eye. He looked up from the console, wild-eyed and desperate. He looked at the screen, reading the name Violet Parker looming over him. Then he looked at me. He realized, in that split second, that the $5,000 had not bought my silence. It had bought his execution. I checked my watch. 2:05 p.m. The securities fraud investigation I had triggered by reporting the live stream to the SEC would be opening a file right about now. I smoothed my skirt and waited. The show was over. The trial was just beginning. Henry did not wait for the applause, mostly because there was not any. The auditorium was a cacophony of confused murmurs and ringing phones. He scrambled off the stage, his face a mask of purple rage, and stormed toward me. He did not care about the cameras. He did not care about the investors. He only cared that his perfect facade had just been shattered by the daughter he thought he had buried. "You little traitor," he screamed, lunging over the velvet rope of the VIP section. Security guards stepped forward, blocking him, but he pointed a shaking finger at me. "I will sue you for every penny you have. You signed a non-disclosure agreement. You violated a binding contract. I will have you in court for the next 20 years. Harry had followed him down, looking shell-shocked, like a child who had dropped an ice cream cone. But Henry was in full attack mode. He turned to a man in a sharp gray suit standing near the exit, his high-priced corporate attorney. "Preston, get over here." She breached the NDA. "I want a lawsuit filed before she leaves this building. Intentional sabotage, corporate espionage. Throw the book at her." For a second, the room held its breath. The lawyer, Preston, looked at me, then at Henry. He looked expensive and dangerous. If I had been an employee, if I had been the help Henry thought I was, this threat would have worked. The weight of a corporate lawsuit can crush a normal person. Henry smiled, a twisted, ugly thing. He thought he had me. He thought the law was a weapon that only he knew how to wield. I did not flinch. I stood up, smoothing the front of my blazer. I picked up the microphone Harry had dropped in his panic. "I didn't breach anything, Dad," I said. My voice amplified over the PA system, cutting through the noise. "Because that contract is void." I tapped my phone screen. The massive display behind the stage, still showing the ominous black and white error message, shifted. It pulled up a high-resolution image of the check Henry had written me the night before. It was magnified 10 feet tall. The jagged handwriting was unmistakable. And there, circled in bright red digital ink, were 2 words on the memo line. "Consulting fee." "Yesterday, you paid me $5,000, I said, addressing the room of investors. "Not my father. You insisted on marking it as a consulting fee to avoid paying payroll taxes. By doing so, you legally classified me as an independent contractor, not an employee. Under U.S. copyright law, independent contractors retain full intellectual property rights to their work unless a specific assignment agreement is signed. You didn't give me one. You were too cheap to pay for the paperwork." Henry's face went slack. He looked at the screen, then at me. "And as for the NDA," I continued, swiping to the next slide. It was a zoomed-in paragraph of the document I had signed. Paragraph 4, Section B. "This agreement is null and void if the signatory provides false information regarding asset ownership. You told the investors and me that Redstone owned the code. You lied. You committed fraud. You voided your own protection the moment you stepped on that stage." Henry spun around to his lawyer. "Fix this!" he shrieked, grabbing Preston's arm. "Do something! She's lying! Twist it!" Preston looked at the check on the screen. He looked at the consulting fee memo. He looked at the NDA clause. He was a professional. He knew exactly what he was looking at. He was looking at a client who had just admitted to federal securities fraud on a live stream. He pulled his arm out of Henry's grip. He closed his briefcase with a sharp snap. "You told me you owned the IP, Henry," Preston said, his voice cold enough to freeze water. "You lied to counsel. I cannot defend securities fraud. You are on your own." He did not look back. He walked straight past Henry, past Harry, and out the side exit. He was gone before the sirens even started wailing outside. Henry stood alone in the aisle, surrounded by 300 people who now knew exactly what he was. He looked at Harry, but Harry was staring at the floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. I set the microphone down on the seat. I did not need to say anything else. The silence in the room was louder than any scream. The double doors at the back of the auditorium pushed open. It was not a SWAT team kicking down the entrance. It was quieter and far more terrifying than that. 3 men in dark, ill-fitting suits walked in, flashing badges that did not glint under the stage lights, but carried the heavy, dull weight of federal authority. The Economic Crimes Division. They moved with the efficient boredom of people who had seen 1,000 frauds implode before lunch. I did not stay to watch the handcuffs click. I did not need to see Henry weeping, or Harry stammering excuses to agents who did not care about his vision. That part of the story did not belong to me anymore. That belonged to the courts, the tabloids, and the prison system. I grabbed my bag and walked up the aisle. I passed Henry, who was slumped against the wall, looking like a man whose soul had been repossessed. He looked up as I passed. For the first time in my life, he did not look at me with contempt or dismissal. He looked at me with fear. He finally saw me. He saw the architect, the investor, the woman who had outgrown his small, cruel world. I did not stop. I did not say goodbye. I just kept walking, past the stunned investors, past the empty registration desk, and out through the front glass doors. The sunlight hit me like a physical force. It was blinding, warm, and real. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with air that did not smell of old resentment and stale turkey. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was not Henry. It was not Harry. It was a notification from my assistant at Tech Ventures. Inbound calls from 3 major VC firms. They saw the live stream. They want to know if you are taking new partners. They want to work with the person who wrote the code. I smiled. For years, I had convinced myself that I was the problem. I thought if I just worked harder, stayed quieter, and fixed more of their mistakes, they would eventually love me. I had made myself a shadow so they could shine. But shadows do not exist without light. By stepping out of the darkness, I had not just saved myself. I had revealed them for what they truly were. Hollow things that could not survive direct exposure. I did not destroy my family today. I just stopped dimming my own light to accommodate their darkness. And without me there to hide them, they simply burned up. I walked down the concrete steps, my heels clicking a steady rhythm on the pavement. I had a condo to buy. I had a fund to run. I had a life to live that was worth a lot more than $5,000. They tried to bury me, but they forgot I was a seed. If you are ready to stop being invisible and start growing, share this story. Let us remind the world that shadows eventually clear.